Welcome, everyone. I appreciate everyone taking the time. Looks like we have a good set of attendees here, so I appreciate everyone taking the time. As mentioned, today we'll be highlighting 10 key findings that Kambi's found over the past year or so since PASPA was repealed. I think you guys will really enjoy it. So here, let's kick this off. For those of you on the line that are not familiar with Kambi, we're a leading sportsbook provider across the world, but for the purpose of this discussion, we'll focus on the United States. Although we partner with over 20 operators globally, in the US, we've partnered with top-tier innovative market leaders I hope you are very familiar with. Those include DraftKings, Rush Street Interactive, Kindred, Parx Casino 888, and most recently, Mohegan Sun. And we've been very successful thus far in 2018 and the first part of 2019, being recognized by EGR as the sports betting platform provider of the year and the sports betting supplier of the year. So we're very excited at the progress we've made and hope to continue in 2019 and in the future. For those of you not aware of what Kambi actually does for our operators, we're responsible for odds compilation, trading, the risk management, and helping our partners differentiate their front-end needs. The graphic that you can see right now gives you a representation of where we sit in the sports betting ecosystem. It's fairly simple, but as you work with operators, our expertise has enabled us to work with these top-tier partners like the ones you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. And how we typically work is we transform the raw sports betting data into the markets that customers are ultimately able to wager on. So it's a linear path of taking the real-time data, processing it, and allowing our operators to push it to their customers to be able to take action. This is really our core competency. We focus on supplying the best sports betting technology in the world to our operators. We don't focus on other parts of the business, such as casino or other parts of gaming. We're exclusively a sports betting company. In the US, we've made considerable traction and made some progress and placed a large emphasis on speed to market and delivering a world-class engine to our operators. We've accomplished this a number of different ways, but for the most part, working closely with our partners from a technology side, the operators that are the front end side of the business, and most importantly, and arguably most importantly, are the governing regulators. We have great relationships with each regulator in each jurisdiction, and they've helped us to be the first to market being licensed and the first to market in several states, taking the first online bet in New Jersey and being a market leader in the sportsbook market in both states of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, we have a leading operating footprint from a retail perspective, and just recently helped support Rush Street Interactive to take the first online wager in Pennsylvania. So a couple landmarks for us that we're very proud of and hope to continue this across several states that begin to legislate and regulate over the next few years. Now let's move on to the top 10 of why you all are here. We're limited in some sense of what we can show given confidentiality of our operators and how we do business. But here's some interesting insights we've seen since the repeal of PASPA last May. Number one, for first-time bettors, basketball is the most popular sport. Naturally, this could be attributed to the amount of games in comparison to other popular sports in the US like football. Regardless, operators need to be armed with a quality basketball product that can not only attract customers, but also acquire and retain the best ones. So basketball, from what we've seen, is a very important sport. You take into account college and professional basketball in the US, it's very popular. So this is not a huge surprise, but it validates an assertion that we've had for quite some time. Number two, of new US players, about 25% place their first bet on an in-game or in-play live event. This emphasizes the need to have an exceptional in-play offering because the data indicates that this is an important element of what US players are looking for when they're deciding to bet with an operator in a given market. If you take New Jersey, for example, there's a number of different operators and companies that a recreational player or a novice player is able to choose from. but we see that if you have a quarter of your players betting straight away on an in-play event, like the next field goal in basketball or a shot by shot in golf, it's very important to have a quality in-play product. Number three, when wagering on the futures markets, players tend to spread their cash across several teams. One player that we've seen has backed over 23 teams to win the NBA Finals. This really highlights the fact that operators need to ensure that they have a dynamic futures offering that is continuously updated with the appropriate prices and odds. These markets are integral because players can cash out a futures bet, close their position, and open a new one. So this is a fairly surprising just based on the breadth of the offering that's available on the futures market, whether it's in this case 1 in 4 bettors backing one or more team to win the finals, but we also see some of that across. So who will be the MVP, who will be the finals MVP, having those markets dynamically change as events occur is huge for operators to make sure they have a quality product that gives the customer what they're looking for based on what happened in the last game or the previous series. Moving to number 4, found this very interesting. US bettors stake around 40% more per bet than UK punters. So there's a few factors that may contribute to this, such as FX exchange rates or pre-game bias in the US. Typically, US players don't bet as much in game as UK players, and also the function of creating accounts, some of the bonusing functions that our operators use to acquire players could contribute to this. But overall, we've seen a significant increase per bet in comparison from the US to the UK. Moving on to number 5. Majority of US bettors bet on other sports. So it's widely being conjectured by as many industry experts as you can count that basketball, football, baseball, and hockey are the only important sports in the US. Based on the data that we've collected over the better part of a year, this is clearly not the case. US players have a large appetite to wager on sports like tennis, golf, and soccer that are contributing to handle and making operators very successful. So this is another assertion that we've seen be validated through actual real data that most US bettors are not just betting on the NFL or the NBA, they're betting on many other sports like golf and tennis that enable them to get a wider breadth of offering to attract and retain these customers. Moving on to number 6, there's a lot of popular sports, clearly basketball, based on this graphic and the data that we've collected. Basketball and football are the clear leaders, but US sports bettors, like I mentioned just a second ago, enjoy soccer, tennis as much as they do ice hockey and baseball. Kambi's operators perform well in these sports by leveraging the platform to offer real-time wagering. In golf, it's shot by shot. In basketball, it's whether the next field goal will be a 2-pointer or a 3-pointer. And in tennis, you're able to wager on a point-by-point, set-by-set basis, which enables operators to retain customers and make them very sticky, where they're able to continue to come back because they're able to wager on those micro and in-play markets that customers really enjoy. So overall, the most popular sports are what you'd expect, given the seasonality of basketball and football being a very important sport as well. But you can't lose sight of these other sports that can contribute greatly to an operator's success. Moving on to number 7, majority of US bettors have also placed parlays and compared to the UK. Over 60% of US bettors play parlays, while just under 50% of UK punters bet on parlays as well. So this is another assertion that we've seen some industry experts make, that US players have an affinity for only betting pre-match and only betting on single wagers. It's clearly not the case. We've seen parlays be very important to operators as the frequency of parlays being wagered upon has increased based on what we see in the UK. So you need to make sure that as an operator, you have a product that can withhold these customers and give them the types of bets that they want to bet on, whether it's a cross-sport parlay or a cross-player parlay. You're going to enable them to build the types of bets that they want to wager upon. Moving to number 8, about 2/3 of US bettors play in play. Many experts have suggested that US players don't bet in play, like we've mentioned on a few of the other elements in this list. It's just clearly not the case. We expect in-play wagering to only grow in the next couple of years in the presence of high-quality products that are continually innovative. Um, Take tennis, for example, over 70% of all tennis bets that we see come through the Kambi network are bet during matches. So this is in-game betting point by point, set by set on individual players and the games combined. So this is really important to make sure that you're able to not just give the traditional sportsbook experience of who's just going to win the game or what the total is going to be. You need to be able to wager on these micro markets that really attract customers. Some of the ones we mentioned earlier, who's going to win the next point in tennis or what the next field goal is going to be in a basketball game is hugely important, mostly because it keeps the bettor engaged throughout the time. So their in-app time of uses goes up exponentially because they're not just placing a pre-game bet, watching the game and then creating the wager and then seeing who wins. You're able to keep them engaged throughout the series of a tennis match or within a game. So it's over several hours where you can keep people engaged by having a great in-play product. Number 9, we found that US bettors wager more often than UK players. In the top 5% segment, so these are the really high value players, in the US we see them wager more frequently than the same segment of UK punters. In the US, we wager about every 3 days in comparison to about every 4 days in the UK. That being said, UK punters do bet at a higher rate, meaning that the days that they do bet, they place more wagers. So the frequency is a caveat here that could influence this, but overall, you do see the US players wagering more frequently on a day-by-day basis than they do in the UK. The significance here and what this means for US operators is that you're afforded the opportunity to have more touch points with the customer and able to communicate them, whether it's another sport or another offer that you have available. And these can really foster an increased retention that can be very valuable in just the acquisition and lifetime retention of these customers that are of very high value. And finally, number 10, retail has been in the US something that's been very important, just given the rollout of how states have legislated and regulated. Retail has been a component that needs to continually be emphasized, just given how most legislation is written. And what we've seen through the Kambi network in the US has been that 75% of all bets placed in retail have been placed via kiosk technology, meaning at the operator's physical location, they place them at self-service betting terminals. Therefore, what that means is operators need to ensure that their kiosk technology is competitive. It's not just that you're able to wager on a couple games on the NFL on a Sunday. You need to be able to have the full offering that you would expect online available via kiosk, because that's what the customers are mostly expecting, is what they see in different states where they may or may not have wagered on, that you have the same offering at the kiosk. And that's something that we've seen be very important. And the implications for the operators are you're able to manage overhead much more effectively and efficiently by directing people to self-service betting terminals that not only give them the ability to connect with the operator themselves on site, but they're able to go at their own pace and wager on the types of bets they want to and not have the intimidation of having to walk up to a human being and interact with that teller, and they may be a novice bettor that doesn't necessarily know how to bet, or this may be their first bet they've ever placed. The kiosks are much more friendly to the customer. So this is something that's not necessarily surprising from Kambi's side, just because we work with the operators on a day-to-day basis. But for any new operators that are expecting legislation and jurisdiction that are going to be offering sports betting on property, this is very important to make sure you select the right kiosk technology that can enable you to meet the customer's expectations of what they've seen at other properties or potentially other competitors in those jurisdictions. So those were the top 10 items that we've seen and the top 10 elements that we've seen. basketball is very important. Having the depth of a sports offer is very important as well. We've seen that it's not just the big five sports that are important. Customers want to wager on other sports and other types of markets, whether it's pregame or in play. It's very important to have a full breadth of an offering. And finally, kiosks have the potential to really transform the on-property experience. It's not the traditional retail sports betting environment that you see in states that have had sports betting for quite some time. In these new markets like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and a few other that we expect legislation from, it's really transforming the retail experience where you can interact with the customers in a much different way that can attribute to increased handle and greater profitability.